Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. This episode is sponsored by GrowX Labs. Quick question. When you're leading a team or growing a business, who helps you think clearly? GrowX Labs offers executive decision support, real-time access to a trusted strategist who helps you navigate tough calls, leadership blind spots, and everything in between. No fluff, no long-term commitment, just fast, honest insight from someone who gets it. If you're a founder or exec and need a sounding board, go to growxlabs.com/mark. That's grwxlabs.com/mark and book a discovery call today. For those of you who've been listening to Mark My Words for the past several years, you know that every episode is pretty carefully thought out. I really strive to bring something a little bit different to every episode. And not that you can't learn something from having a bunch of people involved in real estate or, can't get diversity with that. But I think one of the many goals that I have is to bring something truly different and interesting to every episode. And today, I definitely feel like I'm going to deliver on that. Aleksandra Ceho, which hopefully I said that right.
You got it.
I got it. Thank you. Yes, I wanted to say your name early just so I could at least have it documented that I said it right at least once. But Aleksandra has a very, very unique role in the entrepreneurial world. Her, we'll get into her journey in a minute or two, but her journey certainly did not start out in astrology and astronomy, at least like on the surface. And one of the many labels that she has as the CEO, the founder of Master the Stars, is Astronomer Royale. She's a business astrologer, author, and spiritual guide, and she specializes in not only astrology and astronomy, and I'm kind of like bouncing through all of her stuff. So, astrology readings, energy therapy, hermetic philosophy, which, as far as I can tell, I don't know much about. She is stoked to educate us on that topic, as well as many others. But she helps business owners and entrepreneurs to kind of like find their way through astrology. And I am really excited to learn not only about her path, but learn how she helps others through something that I find really interesting. And I mean, I've always had a real interest in astrology and astronomy, and I had the dorky idea of, defining, what's astronomy and astrology. I'm not going to do that. But Aleksandra Ceho is here to talk to us today. Welcome to Mark My Words. I'm Mark Schmidt. How you doing today?
I am so wonderful and super excited to be talking to you today, Mark. Thank you so much.
Well, I am thrilled to have you here, and I'm seeing a lot of really cool, interesting things. just about what you do and how you help people. And I can't wait to kind of like dig in and get, one of I know I talked a little bit at the beginning about like the reasons that I do this show. One of them is for me to kind of like live through other people and what they do and their experiences because even though I have a pretty like decent interest in what the topics that you're an expert on, there's no way that I could be a professional doing that. I'm much better off sitting in this chair talking to you and learning from you. So I'm really excited to learn from you and to just learn more about how you help people. I think uh, as a as an entrepreneur, somebody trying to build themselves up, I've heard so many stories. There's so many conversations about mental health and how, you know, learning about your mental health and trying to help yourself in that way is, a good way to heal, especially when you're being like a solopreneur or whatever. And I'm gonna cough for had to mute it because, after 170 some episodes, you learn a trick or two. So apologize for the dead air. But before I get into all of that, um, let's give you an opportunity to talk because I feel like I've been doing enough of the talking. And I see here you went to University of Toronto and you were studying physical education and health. Uh, is that something that you wound up completing? Was that something you were passionate about growing up? Did you have other passions? Talk a little bit about how you decided to do that as a start to your career.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, Mark, I had two loves growing up. So actually my first love was astrology. My grandfather was an amateur astrologer, and I would go to my grandparents' place, which was about 2 hours north of Toronto, where it was a lot of wetland marsh kind of area. So playing outside wasn't, the most fun thing to do there. And so whenever I went to my grandparents' place, I would go and read his astrology books. And it was pretty much how I learned how to read. So I would take his books and then I would sit down with his books and a dictionary to help me with the words that I didn't understand. And so I started reading his books when I was probably about 5 or 6. And by the time I was 10 years old, I had learned how to cast my own birth chart using his books. But I was also a very active child as well. So I grew up, and for some strange reason, it was mostly boys around me. I have a younger brother, and most of my cousins who were close to me in age were all males, and so I played with the boys a lot. So I was running around, I was playing soccer, I was doing all kinds of things, and so that was and how I actually ended up going to the University of Toronto. When I was a teenager, I ended up, well, actually, no, I started training karate when I was a child as well. And then in my teenage years, I found a martial arts club where I began studying Thai boxing and jujitsu and other forms of martial arts. And I loved martial arts so much that that was how I ended up attending the University of Toronto because I decided that I wanted to work in the field of health and work with athletes. And after my graduation, I definitely went into the healthcare field, but primarily I was actually working in clinics that worked with people who had been in motor vehicle accidents. And uh, I've always been passionate about helping people, Mark. That's something that is just kind of innate within me. When I was a kid, I would teach all the other kids in class how to do math or whatever the subject was, and so when I graduated from university, I began working as a kinesiologist, and a little bit to my own frustration and dismay. I found that working in the field of kinesiology and working with my motor vehicle accident patients that I couldn't help them the way I wanted to. Of course, they had physical pain from their accident. And, I would do treatments for them. I try to get them to do their exercises, generally to no avail. Um, But that it wasn't the physical pain that really caught them. It was the pain of having such an incredible disruption in their life. Yes, they had physical pain. Yes, that affected their mental and emotional health. But then they also had to deal with the fact that maybe they couldn't be the kind of caregiver they wanted to be if they were parents. They had to deal with the fact that perhaps their income had drastically reduced because they weren't able to go to work. And also that they had to deal with insurance, which isn't always a fun thing to do. And so their whole lives were disrupted. And the pain of not being able to live their lives the way they wanted to live and being confronted with their own emotions was actually far worse than any physical pain that I was trying to help them work through. And it really bothered me because it's like, yeah, okay, you're starting to feel better, but your life is in such disarray that that actually hurts you more than your back or your neck or whatever it is. So, I'd been studying astrology since I was a child. It was something that I kept alive my entire life. And and so I would often talk to my patients and talk to them about astrology. And, that wasn't always smiled upon necessarily. And finally, it just kind of dawned on me that this isn't going to go anywhere. My personal passion for helping people using the field of healthcare as my instrument or my vehicle was starting to die because I couldn't help people in the way I wanted. And so that was how I ended up making that transition into astrology.
So, did you feel like something spiritual was speaking to you along the way, or was it more grounded in reality? You're shaking your head at spiritual, so I'll let you elaborate.
Well, I'm going to say that it was both. And the reason that I'm going to say that it was both was because my decision came from a place of self-knowledge. And one of the first tenets of spirituality and of hermetic philosophy is to know thyself. To know thyself is the beginning and end of all spiritual wisdom. So I knew myself, and I knew that no matter what had happened in my life, I had sustained this love and interest in astrology, even when I was the only one, even when people told me, that I was ridiculous for loving it to the degree that I did, even when people tried to tell me that I shouldn't do it.
Well,
But my passion for health was dying.
and that happens. I mean, there's many seasons of life, and I know that I've had passions that have come and gone. Oddly, the two things that I'm doing today, this show and my day job, are things that, kind of like mesh together. And I've been pretty lucky to have had these passions like my whole life. So even though, like I told you earlier, I'm always looking to live through others. And believe me, before I got into my day job and doing this podcast, back in the day, I tried like 50 billion things. So I had like 50 billion seasons of life before I just said, why don't I just do what I was passionate about all along? And I know that you kind of had two passions there and one kind of like faded away. But luckily for you, there was like such a good like crossroads where you were already kind of working on that, whether you knew it or not, the other passion. I mean, what steps did you take after you walked away from the health part of your life? How do you wind up where you're an entrepreneur of such a niche profession?
Well, I always like to tell people this, especially if you are looking to become an entrepreneur yourself. When I first started, I knew nothing about business, nothing. I didn't know what it would take, but I wasn't afraid to try. So I first, um, I first started, over 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And when I first started, Facebook wasn't there, no social media, no podcasts, nothing like that. So when I first started, I was making flyers and I was going to different spiritual shops and I was walking in person and meeting people, asking if I could do free talks and presentations. And and I just put myself out there. I built relationships and it all proceeded from there. And I'll never forget the first place that I walked into. I was by far the youngest practitioner, the newest on the block, and charging the most. And the owners of the place that I started with, uh, they really liked me, but they kind of pulled me aside and they said, Alex, um, we really like you, but at the price points that you charge, we don't think you're going to get many people. And I shrugged my shoulders and I continued on at the same price point, anyways.
Eh,
And I always showed up. I always showed up no matter how many people were there. I always dressed well, which was something that very much distinguished me from my competitors at the time, because I was competing against, some of the most, I guess you could say, famous or well-known psychics in psychics and healers in the Toronto area, and I would always show up well dressed, well presented, and it was the funniest thing, Mark. They didn't. And that was one of the things that distinguished me, from these people who had been in that scene for so long. And that was why people were actually willing to pay more for the services that I provided. And the other thing was that I always showed up no matter how many people were there. And it didn't matter in the beginning. If it was one person, I came. And it was my willingness to serve that snowballed it from one person, showing up for a presentation or whatever, to me filling their gallery and having sessions booked immediately after I spoke. I'd have lineups of people wanting to talk to me and book. And it was really amazing. But I really did start off not knowing anything. But because I wasn't afraid to try, and also because I knew my subject well, and because I always showed up. I had that strong level of conscientiousness and dedication and being willing to put in the work. Those other practitioners said, I won't show up if you don't have like 10 or 15 people. And they never got 10 or 15 people.
you're saying something here that's a really important lesson. And the only reason that I think this is speaking to me so much is because in 2025, among all the other things that I've done with my year to try to grow as, an entrepreneur myself, I've been spending a lot of time on TikTok. And I love going live on TikTok. I'm probably actually going to do that after we're done with this episode. And I love going live, but it can be really hard because there's some people who hit it off right away and have a pretty good audience. And then there's people like me who have to grind it out. And if I have one person, like I've learned, if I have one person show up, that's amazing because there's one creator who recently they were getting about, I'm gonna guess about 100 people in their live, which is incredible, like super jealous. And I think there was one day where they were like, oh, I have like 39 people here. This isn't worth my time. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you like, I would do anything to have 39 people listening to me talk on a TikTok live. And I mean, just that part of it, just the fact that even when one person shows up, I know for me, even if I see one download or five or 10 for this show, that's terrific. I'm really happy for that. And I think we kind of lose sight of what is really important sometimes. And I think your approach and the way you showed up, and I really do think it took a lot of moxie to stick to your guns on what you were charging. And, it all worked out. Like, I really respect that a lot. But amazing approach, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. You know, I was questioned by those shop owners one day about why I always came, no matter what. Because I would drive about 60 kilometers to go there. Uh, and a little under 40 miles. And they were like, you come even if it's just one person. And I remember saying to them, if I'm not willing to serve one, why should the universe give me any more? And one of the things that I like to do sometimes when I have like a smaller turnout, I give them extras. I don't give them less, I give them more because they were the ones who showed up. And so usually when you get that small group and you deliver the extra, that's when they really start talking about you. That's when they really feel that you've been served. And so I love it when I have those opportunities to connect with people on more of a one-on-one basis. When I teach groups, for example, sometimes I travel to Japan and I teach with the Modern Mystery School there, one of their programs, the Warriors of Light program. And last time I was there, there's 400 students. I'm not getting much one-on-one time with anybody.
So, when did it occur to you that while helping everybody, I'm sure is like in your blood and something that you're passionate about, when did it occur to you that I should like try to specialize in helping like business owners and entrepreneurs? When did that start?
It started when a lot of my fellow colleagues, so I've been with a metaphysical school called the Modern Mystery School for almost 20 years now. So a lot of my colleagues saw how I was growing and expanding, and they wanted to know how I did it. Now, in the background, I had personally been using astrological forecasting to help myself with timing of events, when to put out promotions, when to reach out and connect with old clients, when to work on more back end things like my website and that kind of thing. And so I had people start to reach out. So I started offering, the same forecasts that I was doing for myself that had been working for me. I started doing it with some of my colleagues, and it just kept growing and expanding. And so that was when I really kind of tailored my own studies into the business applications of forecasting so that I could serve businesses outside of my colleagues who were fellow spiritual healers and guides and practitioners. And I love it. I have gotten to meet people, like you talked about meeting people from all different walks of life. And, I have clients who are engineers. I have clients who work in the field of fashion. I have clients who are nutritionists, who are lawyers, who are doctors, who have their own clinics. I have clients who do property management and real estate. I have clients like in almost every industry, and it is so amazing. One, because I love learning, from them and about their experiences. And two, sometimes they ask me questions that also prompts me to take my own knowledge deeper. And it is just so amazing and such a blast working with people from so many different fields because it always encourages me to learn, study, and own my practice in a deeper and deeper way.
So what kind of clients do you get as far as like where they're at? Are they like usually stuck on something, or are they trying to like just improve their mental health? Are they trying to improve the business? What kind of problems do they bring?
Well, kind of all of the above, to be honest with you, Mark. So some of my clients come to me because, as entrepreneurs, your business isn't everything. You have your business, but then, I mean, who doesn't want a private life? Who doesn't want friends, family, health, those things? And so sometimes my entrepreneurial clients start with me because they're trying to do it all. And it's hard to do it all because they have goals for their business. They have goals for their relationships. They have health goals that they want to achieve. They have emotional healing or spiritual healing that they need to do within themselves. One of the things I always tell my clients, especially when you're an entrepreneur, that the creator is in the creation. If you're not in a good state, what you create is not going to be in a good state either, or at least not its best state. Because some people have their business down pat solid. And while they might have amazing systems and processes, if their heart is not in it, the outcomes aren't going to be as good as what they could be. So often my clients kind of start from that place. They're trying to do it all, personal and professional. But then I do have clients who work with me exclusively from the viewpoint of wanting to grow their business, specifically looking into timing for things such as advertising and promotions, or media coverage, or when to do things like more in-person events, because there are astrological events that can be really that affect your chart, I should say, that can be really good for doing things like advertising. But then there are others where it's better if someone is in your auric, like in your aura, and they get to meet you in person because that's when the magic really works. And so I do have clients who also work with me specifically from that capacity as well.
So talk a little bit about like, they come to you with these issues and, where does like forecasting and that uh philosophy come into play as far as like helping them? And then I'd be curious to know just this might be a silly question. It could be a really interesting question, hopefully, but how much do you like use forecasting in your own life? I'm guessing it's probably quite a lot.
Okay, well, for myself, I use it quite a bit. So I specifically, well, I mean, first of all, I always set this out in December so that I look at my year ahead. So that's one of the things I'm going to be sitting down with over the next couple of weeks is all the transits and things that are going to be affecting my personal chart. So I do that, I set it aside, and then I look at my own personal goals. What is it that I want to accomplish? because what I want to accomplish and the energies that are forecasted for me may not match. And I don't let the forecast dictate what I do. I use it to assist me in timing. And the one thing that I tell people is that when you're using astrological forecasting, it is basically a wind that fills your sails. And any wind that fills your sails helps you cross the ocean. It's great. That's wonderful. You work with that timing. But then there are times where there's no wind in relation to your goals. And those are the times that you have to bust out the oars and start rowing. So combining my personal forecast, combining my goals, I take a look at timing of things. And then, of course, there are things, that happen that I don't get choice on timing. So for example, sometimes I get booked for classes or events or that kind of thing. And well, that goes according to, the organizer, right? But I bear in mind what's happening around that time so that I can show up at my best. And and so I work with forecasting a lot. Uh, Sometimes even down to the hour of when I post things. So for example, one of my favorite things to do is everyone has 8 days out of the year, which is called one of the footprints of Jupiter. And so those 8 days, those 8 footprints of Jupiter are days of luck. They are amazing days for self-promotion. They are amazing days to be in the spotlight for any kind of media coverage, like to launch advertising. Any of those kinds of things are well aspected on Jupiter days. Also, anything you just kind of need a yes for. So, if you were going to be applying for a mortgage, if you could do it on a Jupiter day, you do it. So I love launching advertisements or promotions, or if I have like some really big content that I want to drop that I really want people to connect with and receive well, I will do that on a Jupiter day.
So, what happens when, whether it's for you or a client, when intuition and forecasting clash? What do you do in order to either meet in the middle somewhere or disregard one or the other?
Oh my gosh, well that's an amazing question because most people are not always very well versed with their intuition. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish the difference between your mind and your intuition. And sometimes there are times that, yes, you do need to work against the forecast. Maybe there's like this ripe moment of time where you strike while it's hot, right? But then sometimes it might be your anxiety talking, might be lower aspects of the personality talking. A lot of times it is that, by the
Yeah.
way. We all have this thing that we call a negative ego. And it usually kicks and fights and resists when something is absolutely the right thing to do. So, uh, I always tell people that you need to honor your intuition. That is important, but you honor it when you know it's your intuition and not the anxious part of you or those lower personality aspects that are in resistance, right? And usually when it is, that lower or negative ego, those lower personality aspects, it's like there's a part of you that's kind of like clawing on the inside, like a cat trying to be put in the bath. So,
And
uh, yeah.
so the reason I ask guys because in my life, in my podcast, and whatever I do, I mean, I'll always go with my intuition, but I feel like I'm somebody who listens to their intuition a lot, and I've allowed that to guide me as much as I can in life. You know, much like with everything else, it's just not always possible to have like your intuition just guide you through life, but that's where I feel like somebody like you can be like a really good resource for people, especially, you know, we talked a bit about entrepreneurs and just what, you know, it can be like a lonely kind of thing, especially if you're a solopreneur. I don't know if you have like a staff and have built on that and whether all of this like conflicts with that. That can be a question that's I guess like a loaded question, but yeah, it can be like a very lonely thing. So to have kind of like that grounding source somewhere in there is probably a really good thing for some people because you know you're stuck kind of like making your own decisions, and you know if you're listening to your gut alone, you know that may or may not be a good thing.
I totally hear you. You know, and one of the things that sometimes happens in forecasts is you can have two conflicting energies that you need to manage. And so sometimes, you know, I have clients who have aspects that say, go and be out in the public, go and put on, you know, that face, go shine your light, be a beacon for others, grow and stimulate growth. And also at the same time have, you know, usually those are Jupiter aspects, and then they can have, you know, personal Saturnian aspects happening that encourage them to want to go into that place of introspection, to isolate from the world. And, you know, how do you manage that? And to what degree? And I always tell people that you need to honor both, neither to the exclusion of the other. And if you do it right, you can actually make the best of those conflicting um, transits that are happening. That you can have that time for solitude, for reflection, for introspection, for creativity. But then you can also be out there in the world and not feel completely drained, or feel bombarded by the attention of others. And so it is possible to honor conflicting insights or conflicting energies, and that can be, you know, conflicting transits that are happening, but that could also be the example you gave of, you know, my intuition says this, but then the astrology says this, and so how can I make them work together because they can, and so often it is a matter of honoring both to some capacity.
So, how can you, or maybe what can you say? Because everything that you're teaching and doing and devoted to, while people like you and I are like, wow, this is really fascinating and you have a passion for it, but there might be some people who may want a different type of resource than, you know, somebody bringing a more astrological viewpoint. What would you say in order to like convince somebody or maybe get them thinking a little bit more about how what you're doing could like actually be a better option than maybe I'm gonna, for lack of a better word, more grounded options that are out there.
Absolutely. So the first thing that I tell people is that I work with a soul-centered approach. And if that's not for you, that's okay. I am not here to force anybody. Um, and truth be told, most people at the core of them, um, they want care that goes beyond the tangible. So a lot of times, when I encounter those skeptics, which is, basically who you're describing, right? Trolls are a different story. I don't bother with trolls. But skeptics, you know what? They're still in a place of questioning. And one of the things that I truly believe is that whenever we ask a question, the answer is always present in some way. And so someone who asks a question has the opportunity to actually see a potentially different viewpoint. Now, if they're asking me questions just to prove me wrong, okay, you're a troll, right? So when people ask questions, I like to find out a little bit more about their own personal philosophy because everyone has one. If you think of every person that you know, Mark, and that you really love, they all have their little maxims, their little sayings that they throw out there. And usually those things that that person would say are core parts of their personal philosophy. So I like to get to know what their personal philosophy is. Because a lot of times, whatever their personal philosophy is in alignment with something that I do. And so, a lot of people's personal philosophies really stem from Hermetic philosophy. Hermetic philosophy has greatly influenced the way that we think. And and so when people tell me what their personal philosophy is, I like to break it down and relate it back to energetic concepts. And some people are open and willing to learn and willing to consult something like astrology, which to most people is really woo-woo and out there, right? Um, and for others, maybe it's still not their thing, and that's okay. I harbor no judgment.
I love that. I love your perspective on that. And you're making me think because I'm sitting here and I'm like, what's my personal philosophy? Like, if you put me on the spot and ask me that right now, which you didn't, although you might now that I'm mentioning it, I don't even think I would know how to answer that. I'm sure, to your point, the answer is like in there because I'm a big believer in treating others the way I would want to be treated because I know I have been through a particular journey in my life, born with some issues. I've had to overcome a lot just to like be doing this. So I think I come at things with like a lot of empathy and try to be understanding, but I also think that, I try to just be like, fair as well. And I guess everybody has their own definition of what fair is. But, I think that for me, because I've been through so much, that I think I see life like maybe a little bit more like closer to the ground than maybe like kind of funny, I would say, in the stars, because, the general idea of like what you're doing is something that really interests me. But the metaphorical, like, in the clouds, I would say doesn't apply to me as much. I feel like I'm just talking in circles, but I guess that would be more or less my philosophy, even though you didn't ask.
Well, I like it. So, Mark, out of curiosity, when is your birthday?
January 11th.
Okay. Oh, you're a
I
Capricorn.
am a
Okay.
Capricorn.
Capricorns tend to be a little more grounded and pragmatic.
Yep.
And yet, Capricorns are also the mountain goat who does some crazy things at the top of the mountain. And so through the power of introspection, you really do have the capacity to reach personal depths. So you do reach the stars in a sense. It's more so that you do it in your internal world.
Yep. Yeah, I've read up on Capricorns enough that I definitely like astrological signs. I think for a great deal. There is like a connection, I think, for a good amount of people. I'm not going to say everybody, but I know personally for me, I'm definitely a Capricorn through and through. I definitely see the connection there. Everything that you said is that's definitely a part of who I am.
Absolutely. And the goal is to stop being like Capricorn.
I have to stop
That's
being
the
like
goal.
Capricorn,
Yeah, to grow beyond it.
grow beyond it.
Because every sign has its positive qualities, but then they all have their failings as well. And so, um, one of the goals of astrology, especially if we go back to the oldest teachings of it, because the oldest teachings of astrology said that we're all divine beings. And so we're not here to be in personality boxes. Rather, that you come in with this Capricorn energy, not a Capricorn personality, a Capricorn energy, and you use it in certain ways as part of your purpose here in the world, but you're also not meant to be bound by it. And so, if you were being stubborn, 'cause sometimes Capricorns are a little bit stubborn, right? But if you were being stubborn and someone called you out on it, the one thing you should never do is blame it on your zodiac sign.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Awesome. But some people do. Some people do. And so we actually want to grow and evolve beyond our zodiac sign. And so, I mean, there's a whole lot more that I haven't even begun to speak of, including your ascendant or your rising sign, which tells me about what you're growing into. What is the sign that you are in the process of becoming? And where is the moon? That tells me more about your emotional nature. Mercury tells me about how your mind works, how you communicate. Venus tells me all about the nature of love and affection within you and your creative streak and creative genius. And when we explore the entire chart, we are really looking at the different archetypes that exist within you. And the sun or your zodiac sign is not always the predominant archetype. And so for anyone listening who doesn't really resonate with your zodiac sign, there's a pretty good chance you have a lot of planets sitting in another sign, and that's why you don't feel the connection.
I love the way you're talking here, and it's kind of a shame that we're getting to the end of the episode. But one thing that I love that you've been bringing up a lot is creativity, because there's a lot of people out there who, like, there's one person, real good friend of mine, they're a fellow live creator on TikTok, and I keep trying to tell them, I'm like, you are creative. We're all creative. And there's a lot of people who just dismiss themselves as not being creative. And that frustrates me, because if there's one thing I have learned is that we're all creative in one way or another. And I love that you keep bringing that up, because that kind of tells me that that's something that you try to teach people. And I think that's a really important thing to teach everybody.
Most people think of creativity as, like something on the wall behind me, a painting, and so they think of the traditional arts as the only form of creativity. And that's not true at all. I mean, how many scientific advancements have we made because someone dared to be creative and do something in a different way? How many times have you encountered a problem and solved it with duct tape and a pencil? Like, there are many forms of creativity. Some people express their creativity through movement, some people through their words. Yes, some people on a canvas, or how they arrange a room, or how they put a meal together. everyone has their creative signature. I like to think of creativity as your personal touch on the world. And so everyone has it.
Well, I am going to give you a chance to put your personal touch on this episode one more time. And Aleksandra, this has been amazing. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me for a little bit. Um, I'm going to give you a chance to tell everybody how they can find you and how they can link up with you and take advantage of your wonderful services.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I would be honored to work with anybody, entrepreneur or not. There's so much that astrology has to offer. So you can find me at astrologerroyale.com, or you can also connect with me on Instagram at astrologer.royale. And I would be more than happy to serve you, to connect with you. There's a lot of cool things that you'll find on my website and on my Instagram, a lot of reels and little teachings about astrology so that you can find out more. And of course, you are more than welcome to book a natal chart reading or a forecast if you feel that would serve you.
All right, fantastic. Well, Aleksandra Ceho, thank you so much for being on Mark My Words today. I had a blast. You brought so much value. I mean, you have so much wisdom, and I wish you continued success with everything you're doing. You're doing amazing work out there.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a really wonderful time with you too, Mark. Thank you for this honor.
Oh, you're welcome. And I wish I could have this conversation all day, but we're going to stop it at this. So thanks again for being here, Aleksandra. Thank you all for listening. I'm Mark Schmidt. You just listened to Mark My Words, and I'll be back very soon with another great guest and another episode. Bye for now. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.